Today we are going to talk about this one first, the chapter 1. I hope you've read it. Okay, corpus compilation. For this part, we want to talk about how, one is how you compile a corpus. And he talks about what you should consider, or what other things we can look at the back if this is not, beautiful enough. This chapter is about when you are dealing with corpus compilation, things you need to take care of. Okay, and then this is from a chapter says that the author said these are the things that you need to deal with when you are going to do a corpus compilation. You want to design the corpus, meaning you need to know what you are going to use. Okay. The reason for collecting a corpus is mainly for example, teaching. That's one purpose, or for research, because you want to get authentic data to answer the research questions instead of just making claims without any evidence. That's why you need to know the purpose and then you collect. Especially collecting corpus. A corpus is a lot of work, so you don't want to waste your energy. Next, you're going to collect the text. You know what you're going to collect, and then you're going to collect the text. You want to encode the corpus, meaning adding information, and then you want to see with one text, there might be so much information with the text. Then you need to decide what kind of relevant data you want to include. That's called metadata. The information about a text in a corpus, that's called metadata, okay? And then also, depending on how much you want the computer to read the text, you want to do marking up the text. That's something we can use computer to do it, and also we want computer to read. Also, if you want, for example, linguistic annotation, let's say, so linguistic annotation is something else. For example, if you want to add part of speech, or if you want to add other possible, like we were talking about, like intonation. It could be one linguistic annotation that you want to add for spoken data, for example. Okay, so this is just a brief start about things that you want to consider when you start compiling your corpus. Okay, and then
so the first important principle is representativeness. A corpus must present a clear, defined population, such as a specific group of speakers, a language variety, or a type of discourse. But a comprehensive goal requires large resources, including time, funding, and research teams. So, a small-scale project need more bodies and focus in a small goal. Instead of presenting a large scale, research should focus on specific group or discourse type.
Yes, good.
And a corpus is always a sample. In a general sense, a sample means a text of or a text extract. And in a a sample is a group of cases taken from a population that can present that population.
Yes.
So one common method is stratified sample. This means dividing the population into categories or strats. So first, we should divide population into category and then selecting text from each category in planned proportions. And corpus designs can also consider production and reception. Production means collecting different type of texts, and reception means selecting texts that are frequently read and widely used in the practice. And another important concept is balance. Balance refers to the proportion of different subcategories in the corpus. A balanced corpus including different text types in appropriate proportions. For example, if studying convocation, research must decide how many conversations are between friends, strangers, or in a formal settings. So there are fixed rules for perfect balance, but the proportion should be carefully planned and clearly explained.
That's all? Okay. This part is very important information. When we collect the corpus, we want to make sure representativeness, meaning the corpus should be somehow reflect the real world is. Okay. Think about your research method. Every time professor, your methods, you need to say, it's the same concept. The whole world is the population, and the people that you interact with, that's the same goal. So it's the same with the corpus. You want to represent the corpus, the corpus that you made, you want to represent the real world situation. Okay. So then you need to think, so that's why it says small scale projects is better. Because it's difficult to get all of it, right? OpenAI gets the whole internet. We don't have that money to get the whole internet. So be practical. Say what you need to. Get the collect the data that represent your data, and then you need to give rationale why you do it this way. Okay, and then so one is you need to represent the real population. The other one, the last one, is balance, the proportion between the language used. For example, here it says the conversation types with friends. We are on that's page 5. For example, in the middle, second paragraph. For example, in the case of conversation in a variety of English, the researcher would need a principal way to deciding what proportions of include, for example, of conversation among friends versus among strangers. Okay, so when you think about, so let's say if your goal is to collect English conversations between people, then you probably need to think about all of this. But then you know it's too big. You know this project is too much. Unless you have a research group, huge research group, then you can do that, right? The other thing is, so I think for this part, you need to think about when you collect a corpus, what does that mean? How do you use this corpus to represent the real population? The other important thing is called stratified sampling. Stratified. So we know, for example, we have different types of conversation. But how much? Do we usually talk to friends? Yes. Do we usually talk to strangers? No. So maybe we need a lot of conversations between friends, but we need just a little bit about the strangers. Okay, so proportion. You need to, or the other could be maybe gender, right? If there's a specific, let's say for example, in this class, we have more female students than male students. So then you can see if you want to collect a corpus conversation in this class, maybe you will get a lot of teacher talk. Some students talk. And then you can look at the gender swap. And then also you can look at, for example, the topic. of the conversation. These are the things that you need to consider. Stratified means when you think about the collection, it should have the same proportion of the population. So for example, BNC corpus, almost the earliest corpus. Oh wait, brown corpus is the first one, and then BNC, I forgot which one. When they collect the data, they say, I have 5 types of text. I just give each of them 20. But this could be problematic, because in the real world, it's not like that. Production versus reception. Production, for example, last time we talked about L2 writing, right? L2 writing, that's production. You collect students writing, that's production. Reception, what students hear? For example, what do you guys listen to every day? Do you listen to podcasts? Sometimes, yes? Okay. Anything else you listen to? Do you watch news? Yes? No? Okay. Mary, do you watch? What do you?
Usually Al Jazeera or BBC.
Okay, so some kind of audio input. That's what I'm talking about. Reception. Something you listen to. Then you can collect that as your corpus. Okay. On page 6, very end, the last paragraph, the literature on corpus design sometimes contrasts principled ways of building a corpus to, how to say this word? Opportunistic ones. Principled means represent nothing more or nor less than the data that it was possible to gather for a specific task. You decide what to collect, how much to collect. That's principled. The other one is, somewhere I saw it's like you just get whatever you can, no matter what it is. Then that's problematic, okay? For computer science people, they get whatever they can. Because they think, for example, web crawling is a technique that you can just scrape everything from the internet. So let's say, oh, well, let's collect a news corpus. They collect the news corpus by scraping the web. They don't look at what's really in there. So, and maybe they will get, for example, when you look at the news on internet, for example, you will get some advertisement, right? So maybe they'll scrape that as well, meaning they'll get that as well. So for us, we want to be more principled. Okay, moving on. 1, 2, 2. I don't know.
So for this part, I'll talk about issuing collecting data for the corpus. So for the data accessibility is an important consideration. So the corpus data can come from many sources, but the accessibility of these sources varies. So some types of the discourse are publicly available, such as the course descriptions or the public lectures. However, other types of data may be restricted or confidential, such as the teacher's feedback. And for the second, researchers also need to consider the data processing and management. Like the spoken data must be transcribed into written form so that it can be analyzed by computers. And for written data may also require format conversion, such as the OCR scanning, converting PDF files into text, or cleaning the unwanted symbols. And the third is about the online data consideration. So although the internet provides a large amount of electronic text, but the researchers should always prioritize the relevance of the data to the research question rather than the convenience of the access. And next is about the accuracy and logical issue. So the research must ensure the accuracy of the data and consider the legal and aesthetic issues such as the copyright restrictions. And for the last one, there is no fixed rule for the corpus size. So in general, the more data, the better. So however, the required amount of the data depends on research purpose and the linguistic feature being studied.
Thank you very much. So a lot of things, I think what Sally listed here are the things that we should be aware of. But maybe when you collect data, it's not that difficult. It's not that much things, not many things, because we don't really need to know what's going on. Okay, but in general, if, for example, last week we mentioned, for example, Coca, right? Coca is the biggest, currently I think it's the biggest corpus right now. It gets the data every day from the internet. And because it's developed by corpus linguist professors, so they know the principal ways to collect data. One thing they did was the first one, data accessibility, is that because they already collect the data, they kind of bought those data, and later on they want to sell the corpus. So if you go to Coca website, you want to buy a portion of the data, that's possible. And I think that's good because you don't need to collect, because they already collect for you. And then you can buy the corpus, and then you can install it, put it in your computer, and then you can work on it, things like that, okay? The most difficult one, again, is still the spoken data. I think that's the difficult one. But one thing I want you to think about is that ancient data. Ancient means, for example, before computer is fully accessible by people, a lot of texts are still in books, right? Papers. And then if you want to get those words, then you need to use the OCR technique. OCR is to transform words from text to digital form. And then you can do that by using Google Doc as well. If you open Google Doc, you put in one image, and then you can get the words out. Right now, these days, you can also do that with ChatGPT. Okay, so right now OCR is very easy. When I was a student, I mostly need to type it, because OCR is not, if you get the free one, it's not that accurate. So instead of letting let it do the work, I'll just type it. Or even if, so that's how I remember at the time when I was a PhD student, we bought a software, and then for PDF file, you can say, I want this part, this part, this part. So you're on the computer and just try to get the things that you want and wait for it to be transcribed. That takes days. But these days, I think if you guys are going to collect a corpus, I don't think it's that difficult. Well, depending on what you're going to do. But I will say compared to when I was a student, it's much better now. Okay. Yeah, this check accuracy is very important. Because then if you get things wrong, then it's wrong. Then you probably cannot get what you want to research, okay? Here, the more data, the better. In the past, well, not in the past, but usually people follow a rule saying that if you want a corpus, it should be 1 million words. 100,000. But then it's difficult. It's difficult. And then for a class project, I'm not going to ask you to have such a huge corpus, because it's almost impossible. Unless you can get something, that's already available, and then you just do your research based on the corpus, then that's okay. If you're going to collect your own corpus, then we will talk about what would be the appropriate size for your corpus. Okay. So for research purpose, most of the time it's kind of okay. Like for example, if you collect, for my study, I collect journal articles. I don't need permission for that, because it's there. it's available online, and our school subscribe the journals. So yes, I can use that for research, but I cannot reproduce the corpus and sell it. That's the difference. I can do it for research, but I cannot resell it. Okay, so that's the fair use. That's the fair use that for researchers. That's what I can do. Now, if you want to collect data from people, at least you need to get a consent. You need like a piece of paper saying I am willing to give my data to something like that. The IRB Ethics Board in Taiwan mainly deal with, for example, experimental research. So like rats, bunnies, or human beings, medicine, this type of thing, most of the time. In the States, yes, if you want to collect writing from students, you have to have IRB. In Taiwan, it's a little bit half and half because they didn't require that much. Or there are different forms of it. For class purpose, as long as you get the consent with the person, I think it's okay for the class, okay? Above that, then we need to discuss. Okay. And then for anonymous data. Now, once you collect the data, everything should be anonymous, meaning there's no real name. You don't want to say who wrote this or who talked about this. Okay, there's no real name. But sometimes you want to include metadata. Then you can use a pseudonym, fake name, related to that person. And then, I think this one is interesting. For visuals, you want to mask faces, images or videos. Think about the YouTube videos that you saw online right now, these days. They mask people's face, right? So the YouTuber is talking about maybe some travel information and the people walk around and then they mask their face because some kind of copyright issue and data protection issue. That's right. Okay, so these are the things that you should be aware of. But I think for the class, it's not a huge thing. Okay.
So there are reasons to document what's in the corpus. First is to prevent the corpus compilers from forgetting important details of the specific context of the data, even if you're deeply familiar with the content. And second, if the corpus is made available to others, they need to know what's in it in order to make an informed decision about whether the design of the corpus is appropriate for answering their specific research question. And third is to enable researchers to draw on various variables in a systematic way when analyzing data from the corpus. And there are several ways in which information about the corpus design can be disseminated. First, research publication such as a research article or a meta-analysis thesis, which includes a section or chapter describing the material. And corpus descriptions are sometimes published in peer-reviewed journals, especially if the corpus is breaking new ground, so that the research community can benefit from discussions on corpus design. It can also be done by writing a report solely dedicated to describing the corpus, which is made available either as a separate file stored together with the corpus itself or online. And these are documents that are commonly used in corpus compilations. The consent form from the participants, the questionnaire, and a text.
That's good, thank you. I like what Roy said. Even you are familiar with the data, you still need to have some kind of documentation. Otherwise, in the future, what if you forget and you want to use the data? That's problematic. Okay. You can look at page 12. Page 12, figure 1. That's the metadata that you can write. You can compile along with your corpus. You want to add enough information about the corpus and also about each text. If we are talking about conversation, we want to know, for example, who is talking to who. Of course, it can be pseudonym, but I would like to have, for example, like gender or age, because that makes the text read very differently. If you look at the text and then you say it's male to male or it's male to female, that's really different. And if it's, whether it's kids to adults or adult to adult, I think even with the same text, you will try to understand from different angles just because of gender or age. So page 12, this figure shows you probably these are the information that you need to include along with your corpus. Remember the MyCasp corpus? This is actually from metadata, right? This gender, age, academic position, first language. This is from speaker. So this is speaker's metadata. So that's why they can categorize their speakers like this. So this is the information for their corpus. Okay. So after you see the figure, then below that you see the 3 documents for corpus compilation, and that's what Roy just mentioned. Consent form questionnaire about the participants, and also maybe like a README file. So README file could be something on figure 1.1, things like that. Okay, thank you. Next one, formatting.
For some projects, the programming required is more complicated than a researcher might be able to handle on their own, and so they might want to work with a professional computer programmer who can deal with that complicated coding. And then when you're formatting your corpus, usually you want to avoid Microsoft Word and use plain TXT files. And then 2 important terms are markup and annotation related to corpus linguistics. Markup is codes you insert into a corpus file to indicate features of the original text rather than the actual words of text. For example, inserting code that indicates paragraph breaks in written text and pauses in spoken language. So not the words themselves, but features of the data. Annotation is code within a corpus that embodies one or more linguistic analyses of the language in the corpus. For example, coding for word type, so noun, adjective, verb, etc. The current standard for corpus markup annotation is XML, extensible markup language. It has norms that most corpus linguistics software already uses, so it's more efficient to use it. You don't have to use it, but it's generally easier. And then like we discussed before, how characters are encoded can be an issue, especially for non-alphabetical languages, because of things like space recognition with languages that don't use spaces, for example.
Thank you very much. Okay. For this page, I want you to focus on, this is about formatting. So when you collect a corpus, please don't save it in Microsoft Word. Important, very important. Because Microsoft Word would have additional information. So plain TXT file would be the best. With the naming, with the encoding UTF-8, that's on your page 15, you can find the word UTF-8. When you save a text file, you want to use the encoding UTF-8, that's the standard. Okay, that's one thing. Now, markup. Markup, for this one, you can look at page 14, figure 1.2. This is like a general markup for the corpus. And you can see they use angle brackets, right? They add a lot of information. And what's the word here? What's the real word that people see? In the quotation marks, like but, like. Do you see that? Line 3A, line 3B and 3C, you see but and like. That's the real word. After those, follow those words are the adjectives. Oh, and then you see, but like I was thinking this is gonna be so embarrassing, like in PE. You see all the words? Do you see how I read it? So this is one line. From the beginning, it has a angle bracket and they say W, right? I guess that's word. And then in the end, you have angle bracket, close. This is the opening. And this is the end of one line. And here's the word, but. C5 stands for something else. And then you see dot, dot, dot. And then you have segments. And then you have pause. So you know there's a pause, right? This is also like annotation. Because you cannot, pause is like a space, right? You have to add something to say, here's a pause. And if possible, some people may say how many seconds it takes, depending on your purpose. But what I just said, I said, but like I was thinking this is gonna be. So it's interesting because he put it this way. Gonna be. What's that? It's here. Why is it not like this? I think it's a token problem, tokenization problem. It did not recognize Ghana as one word. But Ghana, this is gonna be, so it actually means going to, right? So maybe it's split like this. That's possible too. If you want individual words on the speech, you have to split it. Okay? So, just an example to show you what it looks like for annotation and markup. This looks like this. And then maybe you may ask, can this be done by computer? Yes, I think so. This should be done by computer now, these days, not in the past. I want to mention on page 15, XML is a way for annotation. Is a format. And the next paragraph talks about UTF-8. You need to store the file as encoding UTF-8. And then the next paragraph is called, there's something called Text Encoding Initiative, TEI. This is very commonly used, universally used as the markup for corpus. Sometimes in digital humanities, when they store this information, they may talk about, for example, location. 热毛遮城 location, they will put it there. Or someone's name, they will put it human name, 人名, like that. But I don't think they really use Chinese for that. They use depending on the manual. Okay, so not just part speech. Part speech is important, yes. But sometimes you want to analyze more information, then you need to give the, how to say that, like the global entity of that certain thing. Like, for example, our school, 国立高雄科技大学, right? If you split the word, you say 国立高雄科技大学. Yes, these are all terms. 国立高雄科技大学, but that doesn't mean the location. If you split it, you have to see it as a whole, then you know it's a school. Okay?
Next time sharing the corpus, first we need to understand the corpus can be divided into two major types. The first one is standard corpus layer are large databases and they are widely used by researchers, teachers, or other people. So they are usually decided to be represented whole languages. In contrast, like Irene just mentioned, small-scale projects need modest goals. So this kind of corporate usually created for specific research projects or focused on certain research questions. And next are the importance of sharing the corpus. First, it can support research replicability in research and fosters generosity in the research community. And it also encourages collaboration in the academic community. Next, when we share the corpus or share the corpus, we also need to notice access and reservations. The first one is using licenses to keep a recorder of users and enforce specific terms of use. Second, we also need to protect informants' privacy. And finally, another consideration in sharing the corpus is how to make these resources accessible to others and how to preserve digital data. And the easiest way is to store copyright in archives like Oxford Text Archive or library.
Thank you very much. Okay. I think we don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? If someone already collect a corpus that is useful, that's maybe it's similar to what I'm going to research about, then yes, we want to use the corpus. Now, so in this class, it's fine if, let's say, several people want to work on the corpus together, but then you can have different research questions to work on. I think that's okay. That also means sharing a corpus. But here, Mandy talks about if we have a huge corpus and if other people want to use this corpus, then we need to be careful. That's why we need a license and we want to protect the people's privacy. That's why we use pseudonyms, anonymous information, etc. Or I think certain weeks we will talk about analyze, for example, keywords analysis. For that, we need to do, for example, cross-corpus comparison, because this question, I think is interesting. Where is it? No. Here, page 17, line 3. Line 3. Is the frequency of X a little, a lot, or a little? How do you know if certain word, let's say, happen 50 times, is it a lot or a little, right? Depending on what corpus you're looking at. Depending on the size of the corpus, that's one thing. And then let's say if one word happened in one corpus more frequent, and then it happens less in a different corpus, what does that mean? Similar for here, it says similar frequency doesn't mean similar meaning. We need to be careful when we want to do a comparison, and it's possible to do it. We just need to be aware of the statistical analysis for this. Okay, and then for this part, the other thing, when you want to compare corpus, make sure they are kind of similar. They are kind of similar. The keyword study that I did before was I want to look at electronic engineering. What kind of keywords they use? So think about this. Electronic engineering. So I collected journal articles from electric engineering. Okay. but I only want electric engineering vocabulary. So I have another corpus called engineering in general. Engineering, so not like general English, general disciplines. No, I have an engineering without electric engineering. So then vocabulary, if I find in this two corpora, if the general engineering has the word, this will also happen in my target corpus. But then let's say it happens more in the engineering corpus. They both have the word, but this one has more. Then that's not a keyword for my corpus, right? If I have one word that happens more in electronic, but not in the general engineering, then that's the keyword for me. Okay, of course there are stats behind this, but that's easy to say. Okay, so corpus comparison is also very interesting to look at. For example, if you have two types of fiction, one is written mostly by, one is only written by male authors, the other one's by female authors. And maybe they are talking about similar fiction stories. Are they going to write the same or differently? That's one type of comparison we can do as well. Okay? So let me conclude this part. So after you know all the information, the factors that you need to consider about compiling a corpus, there's an inevitable challenge. That's when you collect the data, you are doing simplification because that's not the whole population, right? You are sampling. And also information loss, because if your metadata is not complete enough, that's problematic. So to help with that, the third one, corpus enrichment, is something that this book encourages corpus linguists to do, is to really make sure you have enough information for metadata and annotation. So when you share the corpus, then people can, other researchers can have the data and then trying to help to analyze it in a more meaningful way. That's the goal. Okay. The future direction, multimodality. We were talking about spoken data, right? In the beginning, they just do the transcription. So a lot of data is missing. For example, intonation. When speakers talk, this sentence, does the speaker raise or fall, the intonation? And that makes a huge difference. That actually changed the meaning, right? But right now, the current spoken data doesn't have that. That's why multimodality, meaning maybe we can really have a video along with the text. And then we also have all the annotation, things like that. And then also if there are more collaborations between different fields, maybe we can have better corpus studies. Okay, that's the end of the chapter. The research team is trying to collect data for their business communication corpus. They are meeting with a company representative to request access to internal business emails, reports, and meeting transcripts. However, the company has concerns about confidentiality and data protection and how the data will be used. This sounds valid, right? Sounds like if you want to collect the corpus, this is going to happen. Okay, so we will have two people in a group, in pairs. And then for each group, you will have a role. And I'll just do it, randomly. Okay. So you have your role, because it's like a little discussion, right? Or a debate. Because for company, they want to make sure their data will be used properly. And then if it's not meaningful, why do we want to give them the data? The researchers, of course, try to get as much as possible, right? And then, so we have different roles in this meeting. We have researcher. Who is the researcher? Which group? Researcher group. We have the company representative. Who is the company representative? Okay. Who's the ethics advisor? The Okay. Do you think who hired the ethics advisor? The company or the researcher? Yes.
The researcher?
I would say company. Because, right? Because ethics advisor is trying to make sure what's given is okay. Okay, employee representative, you guys, because the data is from the employees, right? Okay, so, and then for each page, I show you these are the things that you need to make sure, I know you win, you make sure that you get the right. Okay, so please read the description. So that's your goal. You try to make sure all these things are fulfilled. For researcher, you want to get as much data as you can, right? But of course, you need to be aware of, for example, your other ethical concerns or anonymous situation. So, and then your goal is to get the corpus. For a company, you can decide if you want to keep the corpus or not. For ethics advisor, you want to make sure the whole process is ethical. Everything is ethical. For employees, you want to make sure your names, nothing is leaked out or the data is used properly. And do you need to do extra work, for example? Okay, so for now, one person will be the talking person. The other person is like a secretary to help. Mary's alone. Mary can do both. Okay? You are going to explain the research purpose, the benefits, and then you are going to, I don't know who, here it doesn't say who, but someone is going to address and privacy concerns, someone is going to talk about obtaining informed consent, and then we want to make sure legal compliance and data security, and the final decision. So there will be a final decision, whether they can get the corpus or not, and how it's going to be collected, and how much, for example, data that they can get. Okay? I'm not going to talk much because this is your meeting.
So okay, we can start. So
Everyone, not just for everyone.
hello everyone, I'm Sally and
I'm Luby.
and we are going to, so our research is about improving the business communication studies, and is for training AI for professional writing. So for this time, I want to collecting your company's data about the business email, report, and the meeting transcripts.
Hi, I'm Mary. I'm the company. What benefits would the company get from this study? Yes.
So we are research for improving your business communication. So after we done the research, we'll also give you the result from our research, and this can help you improve your business communication.
Good to know. I have another question.
Good.
Will this study make any extra work for my employees?
Actual work? No, we don't need any actual work. We just need your email, your report, and when you are meeting your employees, they speak their transcript. That's the regular work.
That's a regular work, according to them. That's the regular work.
Before accepting this research, we have some questions. Want to make sure will employees be fully aware of how their data is used? Because not everyone
So that the company, that the data will be fully
analyzed and used strictly for academic proposal. So the employee not too aware about your emails content will be published. So we'll also remove the identifying information from the data. So all your name, the company name, your own name will not be right on our research.
And also, participants should be able to opt out at any time. So you don't have to worry about whether you want to stay or you want to leave in this project. And also, we will ensure adherence to general data primary regulation and institutional ethic boards and corporate policies. So you can trust us. You can trust our service.
One more questions I would like to ask. Can employees review or approve messages before they're included?
So once again,
So, okay. Can employees review or approve messages before they're included?
if the employee you don't want to see the information, you will remove the information. That's why you ask. I would say maybe no, because we already give your company some benefits we have talked about. So if the data we already collect, we will let you change or remove any. But we will prove that we will ensure that this data we will use it legally and will not share your privacy. Also to the company. So the data we can see, we can use, we will not share to anyone or also your company. If there's something that you say is bad for your company, we will just skip and remove it by ourselves.
Some employees might feel uncomfortable knowing their emails are being analyzed. So can you ensure their messages won't be misinterpreted or used against them?
Yes, we can ensure that.
How?
How? As I said before, the negative information you said about the company, we will all remove and delete the information, so it will not hurt your any benefit
Of employees.
of the employees.
Employees must voluntarily agree to have their communication included. So I think employees will have their right to decide whether the message that can be revealed or keep it by
They
their
collected by them.
collected by them.
I have a question.
Yes, you are the company.
I am the company.
Yes, so.
Yes, hello, me the company. Will the way that the data is stored put sensitive company information at risk? Where will the data be stored?
And how?
Do you have any other questions?
As an employee, what can we get?
So all the benefits we will give to your company your boss. So you will give the improvement business communication strategy to your company. Also, we'll give some our research the compensation. Also, the compensation will also give to your boss, your company. So maybe you can ask your boss how to
Divide.
to
Oh.
We have a bug here. Your ethical people say, oh, you can decide if they want to in or out. And then you say you give money to the company. Then what do the other people say out? Do they still get the money? No. Should be no, but who knows, right? Okay. Well, and you need to ask about the decision. That's it.
The company is fine with it. Company says okay.
so do we make for you?
Employees think.
What does the offer think?
Fine by me.
Bye bye.
So, it's all you.
Yay! Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I think we are lacking communication skills now. Okay, but you kind of understand when we need to compile corpus from real situation. That's what need to go through. Okay,